Have that you just know that the mic was turned on and you saw a green bar dancing up and down, and then you're not quite sure that the sound was actually picked up by the live stream. Hmm. Oh, a couple of the last live streams may not have had any audio, at least from the media server computer. So, hopefully, there will be audio on this stream. So, let's do our normal intro. A day is coming. Fight the fade. What we know. 2012. Welcome back to Hybrid Theory. I'm Aurian Archive, and let's get started. As you can probably see on the screen, let's make sure we got this up here. There we are. And we're pulling into the X server can't see something until it suddenly wants to see it. Oh well. Give this a... Come on. Yeah, I'm kind of also getting used to a new keyboard, which was the last stream where I'm not entirely sure that the audio was working, and I don't like the sound of my own voice enough to go back and listen to it. But I'm using a TKO from Kinesis Gaming now, replacing the what was that Black Widow tournament? I think from like 2004, 2013. Okay, there we go. There's our Rabbitanium. Alright, I'm brought in Rabbitanium by herself, well, the subject of this hybrid theory was actually a response to the Mastermind stream, where some players hadn't actually known the history of the Masterminds, or when they launched, or even considered what conditions they had launched under. They likewise weren't aware that Paragon Wiki has been a long-running and long updated repository of information related to City of Heroes. Uh, Nor were they quite aware of the ability to, do research, look things up, uh, check the slash commands, you know, do the things that, well, just someone like me who never really stopped playing City of Heroes, just automatically think to do. And kind of in that respect, oh, that's not the guy I want to talk to. There's the person I want to talk to. Uh, and hmm. What do I want to call this? I mean, I'm not really sure that would work for a panda and a rabbit, you know? And if I go IA Foundation, well, that's... I'm feeling not too many people would get that one. Uh, yeah, you have an idea when you want to do something and you're just not sure. It's sort of like what would I call a supergroup for these two characters? The other thing is that I really don't want to reuse that one or that one. There we go. Crisis Response Team Alpha. Okay, does the acronym spell anything embarrassing? CRA. Uh, okay, what I'm going to do then is what I would normally do if I'm got an idea of what I want to say, but not sure how I want to say it. We'll go to Thesaurus and look up. Uh, oh, I like that. I got one. I'm also having to get used to the keyboard that I have now doesn't actually have a set of arrow keys. Oh, sorry, I just flung a mouse at my cat. I'm not sure that was quite the kind of mouse he was looking to play with. You okay over there? All right. There actually is. Drop makes what I think they call the control keyboard, which does have arrow keys on it. Um, and I don't think I've ever really noticed the arrow keys or lack thereof until starting to do this. Little bit weird getting used to. Whoa, because it's function IJKL to move things around. All right, function now L to get to the end. IRATE. Irate. Alright, we're gonna do since I've kind of gone with the uh, okay, I'm not even gonna bother with those colors. Okay. Oh, right. I went too far. Anyways, what I figured I'd kind of work on simultaneously is first of all, I would set up a supergroup base. And okay, actually, I think now that I registered a supergroup, I may already have a base without having to go specify that I want a base. Okay. Enter supergroup base. Map loading. Okay. So kind of bringing us back, since we're now in a supergroup base and not really of danger of logging out for a moment. Let's come back here and we're going to move and press back to the top. All right. Cards. All right, and we can now close that window. All right. Let's get back to Impress. Okay, going back to the problem with the masterminds. And we'll do kind of a quick block diagram here. And we'll change E to G's to a different color. Fill color. Go purple on you. Fill color. We'll go royal blue on you. We'll go red on you. We'll go green on you. And we'll go orange. Oh, no, we were... Actually, no, we'll do orange there, and we'll do green on the last one. Okay. So, starting... step my text button. Give me a second while I... Okay, I think I just needed... Well, if I... Okay, can I rearrange these? Toolbars, options, view. Okay, I want tools, edit. How am I going to do this? Window. Customize, maybe? Okay, toolbars. I think we can take those out. We can... no, I may want to... I think I can take both of those out. Okay, now I can see my text box. Okay. And we'll do line color. Whoa. As I figure out how to... Actually, that may work, but... Okay. Alright. When the developers first made City of Heroes... Actually, I need to swap two of you. And we'll do another box here with a fill color of... That's a blue, so we'll go with light blue. And we'll put damage 1. Oh, that's not the key I thought it would be. Oh, function. Oh, okay. I have no idea what I just did. Oh. Okay. I think I just turned insert on. Okay. Okay. Nice to know. Okay. I just figured out how to, Okay. There we go. Bear with me as I learn my new keyboard. Alright. That's now gotten to show what I want to show. Now, what I'm figuring out here is when Cryptic first made City of Heroes, this is kind of how they lined up the original archetypes. And how you had it was that blasters were damage 1. And scrappers were like 1x or 1.x. Tanks and we'll do field rate like purple. Tanks were minus 0.x. Defenders were also minus 0.x. Alright. Now, basically what this was supposed to be is that there was a reliable number of damage of differences. Scrappers were like more damaging, tanks were like less damaging. So the number would be like 0.7 from the 1. Defenders would be like 0.5 from the 1. Controllers would be like 0.6 from the 1. So the defenders did more damage to tanks, did more damage than tank. Controllers did more damage than tanks, and scrappers did more damage than blasters. The problem was, and this was why I was looking to figure out how the tiled key works on this particular keyboard, is that the blaster damage was actually 1 to 10. The blasters, actually, the damage range between the most damaging blaster set and the least damaging blaster set was greater than the entire range of difference between archetypes. Yeah, that's right. The difference of damage scale in blasters alone was greater than the average difference between blasters and defenders, or blasters and scrappers, or blasters and tanks, or blasters and controllers. And depending on whoever was running the numbers, that meant that you actually could have tanks, for example, were much closer to minus 1.4. Scrappers were more like 1.1, or even in most cases, 0.9. They were actually not as damaging as blasters in most cases. Defenders were more like... Yeah, this is taking some getting used to. I may just buy a drop control keyboard just to get those arrow keys back. Because while this is great for strictly playing games directly, it's driving me bonkers trying to text edit because none of the keys are like, there's no keys where I expect them to be. Anyways, defenders were more like 1 point -7. They were terrible on damage. And controllers were actually all the way somewhere down at 1.9. And what made this worse is that somewhere in the patch notes over the years past, and I kid you not, there is actually a note that I'm going to try to rephrase it as best as I can. We'll go with a light, what's between green and, we'll go with a light magenta here. And yeah, ancillary powers reverted to normal damage as enough players are now on these archetypes. Now that's kind of, I don't think that's exact wording, but that's pretty much how the blurb went. In that the defender and controller ancillary powers, their level 35 plus attacks had their damage buffed. Or this may have just been controllers. I'm trying to remember if okay, it was the values of the powers that players would get at high levels, 35 plus, have been bumped because not enough players were playing these archetypes. And after enough players were playing these archetypes, Cryptic decided that, okay, there's enough people playing them, we can take the values back down. Now, I just want you to consider that for a second. If your game balance is based around you draw characters to an archetype by temporarily improving the archetype, and then once you have enough players on that archetype, you take the numbers back down to normal. There's another phrase that can be put here. Yeah, it was a disaster. Players didn't like suddenly finding out that their combat-capable avatars were no longer capable of combat. Yeah, that's. I have major issues with how Cryptic handled game balancing. But this wasn't the only problem that Cryptic had. Because when it came to the villain archetypes, the developers really didn't know what to do. Alright, so we'll put a couple of boxes in here. We'll put 5 more boxes, and I'll need to draw some arrows, which is why we're open and impress. Alright. I need 1 more box. I know, why don't I just copy and paste? So we'll color this box. What's between purple and red? There's a purple, there's a red. We'll go with that magenta-ish color again. You have the brute, which is, well, okay, and which was basically minus 1.4 to 0.9 scaling. Then you had the, what's between blue and orange? Okay, there's orange, there's our blue. We'll go with a darker magenta. And you had the corruptor, which was 1 through 10 through, we'll go with 12, double damage. And then we have down here, okay, so let's start drawing some arrows. So we have the scrapper and the tank kind of coming together for the brute. We have the blaster, whoa, wrong button. We have the blaster and the defender kind of coming together for the corruptor. And we have the scrapper and the controller coming together for the Dominator. Alright, and real quick on our fill color, so between red and green, there's red, there's green. We'll actually just go with a light indigo. And the Dominator was like, well, it was actually early on double dom 1.x plus 1 no dom, let's call it 0.5. They could hit, and then you have the and down here we have the, and we'll go with a light brick. We have the Stalker. 0.9x critical. Or actually, we'll go with 0.7x. Well, (0.7x critical). And then it just left the line color here. Actually, we'll do something a little bit more obnoxious. Well, that's hard to see. Okay, that's more clearly delineated, and we'll go with a light that color. And then we have the Mastermind, which was minus 2.2. Alright. If this block diagram isn't making much sense to you, it's probably not supposed to. Because Cryptic started off with a bad foundation. The bad foundation here was choosing to use the blaster as a 1 damage, but not actually having a definition of what 1 damage meant. There was no, and we'll come over here to writer now. No, I don't want to learn what's new. Okay. There's what's called time to defeat, or alternatively time to drop, which is amount of time to defeat an enemy with a natural attack chain. An attack chain is defined as powers that can be used in sequence within a recharge time that is at ED cap, 90%, without waiting and without sacrificing effect or damage. So like on a Stalker, which has, you need 3 attacks to do Assassin's Focus. Stalker, 3 attacks, Assassin's Focus, Assassin Strike. So you want at least 1 punch, 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 AS. Or punch, 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 build up AS. That's pretty much what your attack chain is going to look like on a Stalker. You're going to throw your, whatever your 3 single target punches are, and if you don't have 3 single targets, and I think this is electric melee, since PhD mids doesn't run properly on Linux, I don't actually have a mids build open, and don't take this the wrong way, but I'm not hauling that crap Intel book back out to have it next to me, and I'm not moving my other laptop for this. So we're kind of going strictly off memory here. I think Electric Melee on Stalkers is the only one that doesn't actually have 3 single target attacks, or if it does, one of them is like a really deeply timed. It's animated as a PBAOE, but it's not, and it's frustrating. But that's how you determine your attack chain. What powers can be used in a sequence within a recharge time that is at the ED cap without waiting and without sacrificing effect or damage. So if you have another power in there that you give something up to decrease your damage or decrease your effect, then you've broken your attack chain. And most power sets develop a natural attack chain. And if you start pushing recharge higher than the ED cap by using Invention Origins, Hasten, or having somebody hit you with like Speed Boost, or hit you with Adrenal Boost, or hit you with something like that, you can go up and over that and have enough spare time in the recharge delay to pull off another attack or another effect, say like a self-heal, without losing your damage effectiveness. So your time to defeat on blasters was highly variable. Blaster TTD could be in, for say an archery blaster, could literally be 1/10 the calculated system time of a fire blaster. That's how massive the gap was. And part of that is down to elemental damage. This is again another place where Cryptic made a huge mistake. Smashing lethal damage was weighted higher than elemental damage. Elemental resists on enemies, not lowered to make elemental damage higher on weaker element enemies. E.g., you have a smash lethal attack that does 50 damage against enemies. Smashing lethal damage against con-even minion. Your fire cold, energy negative psi toxic would do 40 damage against minion. But minion would have, say, 50% resist to smash lethal. Minion would have only 45 resist to fire cold, energy negative PT. The one exception was enemies on average resistant to On average, organic, non-robotic enemies have, I think, somewhere around 15-20% resist to psi. On average, enemies with psi resist have 90%. Okay, basically what this meant is that if you were playing anything on average, and these are just the averages here. We'll take psi out of here for a second to make this less confusing. But these are the averages I'm getting slightly faster at this. Averages. And yes, I know I could just use the mouse and get there quicker, and yeah, I'm learning to use this keyboard. Bear with me. Alright, so time to defeat, time to drop, amount of time, developing your attack chain, and your resist. And the live devs blew it. Cryptic blew it. Because the average minion resist to elemental damages was set within a delta range of the average resist to smash lethal, if you were running an elemental character, you could not do more damage than smashing lethal. You could not. The game would not let you. Thus, from a performance perspective, there was no point to taking an elemental attack. You did no extra damage, and in most cases, you did less damage because the calculations were broken by Cryptic. And yes, I'm throwing Gecko under the bus on this one. This is entirely into his corner, and he needs to own it. He didn't. And yes, there were players who were bringing this up constantly, and as one of those who looked at the enhancement system from the start and went, that's broke, that's not going to work, and then when enhancement diversification went around and kind of going like, yeah, duh, I told you that wasn't going to work. Did you listen? Nope. Do you have to fix it 5 issues in? Yep. Are you going to make a hash of it? Yes, you did. Okay. So where we're at is the blaster was chosen as the one. That one was hideously variable. All the other hero archetypes were based off of the blaster damage. But because the blaster damage was variable, all of the other archetypes were also variable. So archetypes that should have maybe been more damaging from the start, like tanks, were hideously underpowered. A tank alone from Cryptic could never possibly take down an Elite boss. They just didn't have the DPS generation. A blaster, if you ran an archery blaster or an assault rifle blaster, you were even more handicapped because you were stuck with taking, case in point, blasters, assault rifle, must take devices for snipe boost. You were stuck with a certain secondary in order to maximize an assault rifle. Otherwise, you had to deal with the fact you were not only doing less damage because you were doing everything smashing lethal, you had no way to do the build up. So even against other smashing lethal sets, you were still doing less damage. Alright. And then we got to the villain side, and that's really where things screwed up because, again, and part of me can understand it, the Cryptic didn't have a clear vision for villains. Basically, what they wanted was so you got the Brute, which was a combination of a tank and a scrapper. It had the survivability, the shields of a scrapper, the base damage of a tank, but had a scaling factor in Fury that increased its damage, where it could catch up to a Scrapper in damage. The Corruptor started out with lower damage than the Defender, but as you wore your enemy down, it started doing double damage, and then it got kind of close to a Blaster. But it had the buff-debuff powers of a Defender, so theoretically, if you could land your buff debuffs in the right order on your attacks, you could generate higher damage and really catch up to a Blaster. Stalkers were kind of a version of a Scrapper. They had less hit points, they had the same shields as a Scrapper, mostly, but they did a critical damage from hide. Their whole thing was hit and run. And then you had the Mastermind, which gave limited control over pets. Controllers got pets, Masterminds got more pets, and Masterminds got the buff and debuff powers from controllers, but at a lower scale. So between all, and then you had the Dominator, which got the melee from a Scrapper, or rather a combined melee range set that was referred to as Assault, and the controls from a controller. And originally, damage was tied to domination. You hit domination, you got a damage boost. You hit double domination, you got a greater damage boost. Eventually that was changed, and dominators were buffed. Later buffed. Dom control only. Alright. Bring our box down to make that fit. Later buff, Dom control only. Now, well, actually, Dom anti-mez. Alright. Mouse scan. Bring down so you fit. Alright. And there were other fixes along the way as well. Fury Decay limited. Fury Cap decreased. So as fixes landed for brutes, they... I need to move this box out, I think. So, for brutes, the Fury Decay was limited. Like, they lost less Fury, they lost their mechanic. Nothing ever really happened to Corruptors. Stalkers did get the 3 strikes AF buff. And they got more criticals. And then they got controlled criticals. And we'll go controlled ATO criticals. Now you might see a pattern emerging here. And yes, that pattern is intentional. Controlled criticals. Masterminds, they never really got a buff. They just had lots of hacks to make pets work. And as this I demonstrated in a previous live stream, where the pets reset and followed you no matter what you do, even if you're getting all fancy with the go-to here, attack here, it doesn't actually change anything. You need your pets within a specific range of you, or they reset. So you're better off just letting them do whatever their AI is dictating, because as soon as you move, as soon as you do something, their AI or their synthetic intelligence just resets. Constant SI resets. Although resist might be pretty good as well. Alright, so in the previous video, specifically on Masterminds, I did outline something that could have been done to fix them as, and we'll do a new slide. All right, file, insert, view, format slide, new slide. And we'll do fix masterminds. And we'll do the background here in orange, fix masterminds. How? Well, the first thing to do would be to do formations. And we'll give ourselves a little bit of text space to do here. We'll go with that color. Formations. Triangle, circle, square. Pentagram. Okay, and this covers the different formations that you can have. So let's say that go over here, and we'll do this in U, and we'll do triangle offensive. Bots blast everything, or pets blast everything, more like it. Pets blast everything. Melee closes in on target. We'll change this to ranged. Blast everything, melee closes in on target. Buff debuff stays with player. Okay. And our next one will be, we'll give this an indigo, and we'll do circle. Bodyguard. Pets surround player, stay close, melee only, attack targets in range. Alright. And we'll do this one in, say, an orange. And we'll do square. Fallback. Pets don't attack. Stay close to player and keep in sync. Okay. And last formation, and we'll do this one in okay, so basically we've covered our passive, we covered our bodyguard mode, we covered our triangle mode, and pentagram is, we'll put it that color, and we'll go with pentagram, free for all. Okay, and what I mean by sync defined as, we'll do this one over here, and we'll do our background in this obnoxious yellow. We'll give ourselves a little bit more space. The players and this was something where I'm honestly don't know why this was not implemented by Cryptic or Paragon, but the game does have a predictive placement based on the character's moments. You saw this in a previous live stream when I ran across Ouroboros and I went to the portal and then I just got teleported back to the start. When you hit a lag packet like that, one of the ways you can get around is just hit R, which makes your player auto run. And when you're auto running, the system itself, the server determines where it thinks the player is going to go. And there are certain powers like teleport where you give the server an explicit location of where you're warping to that will override what the animations may play out as. It's a good way to get around heavy lag areas. Now, because of that, because the system has this predictive movement, because it is taking input from the player, that movement from the player could be passed on to the pets. And it should be possible to make it so that when you press forward, the pet moves forward with you. When you press backwards, the pet moves forward with you. Now, I know why Cryptic went with the quasi-follow that they went with, because it was, you had a lot of potential collision conflicts, and they didn't want to give pets no-clip abilities. Okay, fair point. Having a pet move with you in closed areas may not be... There may have to be adjustments to the sync. And the easiest way to adjust sync is to have break and resync. And we'll put this as this obnoxious orange. Break and resync. On Geo, pathing, hit, limit, pet break sync, wait for server time, then resyncs. Now, what this should, in theory, do is that, let's say you turn around a corner and you have your pets in a triangle around you. And the pets or whatever that would clip through a wall, see the wall, they don't go through the wall, they break sync, and then when you get into an open area where there's enough room for the pet to get back to their position, they automatically go back to the synced position. Now, some of these, may be expanded, like you hit triangle and your pets don't actually form a triangle. If you have 5 pets out, your pets just circle you. But it gives a clearer icon on the screen. You hit triangle, you're in offensive mode. You hit circle, you're in bodyguard mode. You hit square, you're in fallback mode. You hit pentagram, and you know that you're enabling the witchcraft. Yes, that's entirely the reason I set up that pentagram. You're welcome. Okay, so that would be... The thing is, I wouldn't actually try to fix Masterminds by touching the damage ratios or the buff-debuff ratios. The only major change I would make to Mastermind, besides actually implementing formations, is I would do, and I mentioned this in a previous live stream, and we're going to do this as this obnoxious red, and we're going to do pet endurance synchronicity. And what this means is each pet you have out contributes... We better change this to each MM pet, because if you have Dark Servant that could be add an additional pet, contributes 10% base end. So 5 pets equal 50% in base end. This change alone, and I know I did a color change on the text before, and now I'm trying to remember how I did it. No, that changed the outside line. Okay. Not sure what that did. Oh. Okay. Format, text. Oh. You know, I could always do that. Text, increase size, decrease size, half width, cut a... Alright. Spacing, align text. Alright. Styles, character. Font effects. Okay. And now we're going to change this background color to black. Pet endurance synchronicity. Each pet you have out contributes 10% base end. 5 pets equals 50% base end. Now what this will do is it's a patch on the high endurance cost masterminds have. And this gets around that by it rewards masterminds for taking their pets, because there is a concept of a petless mastermind. Now, there was a valid reason to take a petless mastermind, in that some powers could only be had on the mastermind primary. Demon summoning is the only power set that offers the whip. For a long while, Thugs was the only power set that offered dual pistols. So if you had a thematic idea for a character, going with the mastermind may have been the only way to get a specific power set. Well, now we have dual pistols, and I know some people don't like the gunfu aspect of it, but I will lay out the same challenge that I laid out on the live server. Get a pistol. Get any pistol. It can be a revolver, it can be a handgun, doesn't matter. It can be a Taurus G11, it can be a Smith & Wesson Airweight. Just get a standard ordinary pistol. Now, give yourself like 2 or 3 seconds to get into position as though you were going to fire the weapon. How many different ways can you make that interesting? That don't involve gunfu. I mean, how many ways can you visually make holding in your hand? I mean, unload it first. Don't be reckless. Don't pick up a loaded weapon and aim it at something. Because, if you've never taken a course on weapon safety, and I realize a lot of people have never taken a course on weapon safety, never point a weapon, even if you are sure it's unloaded, at something that you're not prepared to destroy. Always act as though the weapon you're holding is loaded. You do not want to be wrong. You do not want to be wrong. So, weapon safety first is unload it. Once you've unloaded it, make sure that you're standing like in a garage, a basement. Even if you know it's unloaded, just follow basic weapon safety, because you do not want to be wrong. But, okay, so you've got a handgun, and again, just try and figure out, what can you do? What animations can you make? What movements can you take? If you were in a motion capture studio, what can you do to make it interesting and visually distinct? As in, you have several different rounds of fire. You have several different ways you can fire. How can you make it interesting? How can you make it so that other players can see that you are doing something? At this point, you may want to pause the video, because if you do have a handgun, you are living, not in California, if you're not in Pelosi City, if you are actually in a free American city, you probably have a handgun. Just do this for me. Just try and figure out how can you make yourself look visually interesting. And the answer is pause. The answer is you can't, because standard weapon safety and weapon handling is boring. Because if you are actually in a firefight, you are bracing. yourself. If you are doing a single weapon, you have your hand cradled. Like if you're a right hand shooter, you have your right hand cradled in your left hand. If you are a left hand shooter, you have your left hand cradled in your right hand. You are braced. You are either back on one foot, you are either leaning forward, you've either got your legs forward, you have braced yourself to fire. You are not pointing gangster style, leaning back, popping off caps at 20 places. Proper weapon handling is incredibly boring to watch because it is about controlling the weapon so that not only can you hit what you're aiming at, but that you don't hurt yourself. If you've never actually fired a handgun, they have a little bit of a kick to them. A good example here, a good, well-drawn example here, is Girl Power by Otaku, or whatever he's calling himself these days. I think he may even be going by his real name. He has a point where his character, Sydney, is on a weapon range and is learning how to fire handguns, and the weapon instructor offers her a much larger revolver, which has a much bigger kick to it. And Otaku does a really good job of animating the difference between firing, say, a normal service weapon, a 357, I think, and whatever the overpowered, I think it was like based on a Desert Eagle frame, if I remember correctly. Would it be like firing a 45 or a 50 cal in a handgun package? It's quite a different kick. But even if you're, say, like doing a 38 special or a 9mm, there still is a punchback. And that's something that when it comes to games, yeah, your character in Call of Duty, your character in whatever, Soldiers of Fortune, character in Battlefield, they pick up a handgun and they're just like holding it at arm's length and just pow, pow, pow. No, if you actually tried to do that in real life, you would break your hand. Real weapon handling is difficult. Real weapon handling requires, and I really do mean requires, training on how to stand properly. And that's one of the problems when you are animating and developing a game, is you are trying to make things entertaining. Not just necessarily for yourself, although that can be a reason, but for the people who are trying to play the game. With City of Heroes, it's very important that there be a visual distinctiveness to each of the powers. Not only can players tell which powers are being used, they can see their own character casting those powers. And actually, a pretty good example of why the live dev decided to go with a gun-for approach to dual pistols is because of thugs. If you've taken the 3 pistol attacks in thugs, you know that your character really doesn't do anything. If you've taken assault rifle, you know that your character really doesn't do anything. There's just only so much you can do with the different effects. And that's one of the reasons why with Sentinels, and there's some changes up to how the attacks are played out. Yeah, they are lifting from the assault rifle animations, but there's been some changes to the effects, a few more sparks here, something there, to make it more obvious that something is happening. And okay, but that is one other. I realize I just went off on a huge tangent here, but it is important when developing, when designing a game. A lot of players they're like, we want that power over here, and the devs go, you do realize that's a lot of work? And same thing with the whips from Demon Summoning. There's only like 3 whip powers animated in the game, and if I remember correctly, according to C. Bruce, they were some of the most difficult animations he ever did. So keeping that in mind, there have been attempts to expand, like do a thermal radiation themed melee set or a assault set for dominators and for strikers. Strikers are an upcoming archetype that one of the developers have been working on for a while. They were actually the last archetype that Paragon worked on, and the best way that I can describe strikers is think Nightcrawler the AT. And they are basically, their whole thing is they get combat teleport by default. So they can zip in and out of battle very easily. And I think that's one of the reasons why we got combat teleport, is that it was basically sitting there ready in the strikers system. And it was that developer, I think Powerhouse, I think it may even be Powerhouse, who actually got it to work, got combat teleport working properly. But the Striker AT is an interesting, it's a good place to put in an assault set where you have a combination of high-powered melee, high-powered range, and it's a good approach to expanding the archetypes that you can play. But that kind of also brings us back, well, what did I just kick? To the first slide, the mixing things without an actual reliable base. Everything Cryptic did centered on the blaster. And because the blaster had such a wide varying range of damage, and other developers were like, well, what are we comparing this to? What's the base? They don't even have a solid base. And that's why I went down the whole thing with the pistol example. Because knowing what you're doing, knowing what your base is, knowing what the foundation is, informs the other decisions that you make. If you are an actual handgun user, then you can understand why the developers went with Gunfu for dual pistols instead of trying to extrapolate the dual pistol from thugs. If you understand the limitations behind the whip wielding, then you understand why it probably needs to be coupled with something else, because Homecoming just doesn't have the resources to, well, unless somebody steps up and says, I want to learn how to 3D model and animate, and making more whip animation sounds just like the perfect project for me to sink my teeth into. Hey, if that's your idea of fun, go for it. We're not going to tell you no. Really, we're not. We're just going to step back and go like, wow, dude, that's insane. I mean, yeah, and this comes back to, I've hammered on this before and before, where NCSoft really just needs to release the source code, everything under a GPL style license. This is an excellent place for new developer, people who just got out of school, people who are thinking about getting into game development, to go, this is a 20-year-old code, let's learn on this, let's see what we can do with this, build the skills there, and then take it forward. Alright. The reason I call this hybrid theory, if you're new to this, I go off on tangents all the time. So let's try and get back on the track. The track being, in this case, taking another look at our Mastermind. So let's scoop back down to the second slide that we have open. And now it's kind of like fixing Masterminds. How? Well, first thing, implement actual formations, implement sync between the character and the pets, implement pet endurance synchronicity, and that's probably it. I mean, come on, I casually pulled out a Mastermind, went after a giant monster, and just stomped it, and I wasn't even trying. I wasn't even using all of the powers that I could have brought to the table. I wasn't using all the tools and utilities that were available to me. I just showed up unprepared and curb stomped Adamaster. Masterminds really don't need anything from a high-level perspective. But they do need individual fixes. They do need individual approaches. And keeping that in mind, the real complaint often leveled against Masterminds is there is so little control actually offered to the player. Adding formations give players a little bit more direct control over how the pets behave around them. And it also, the synchronicity. If your character has fly, then their pets get fly. If your character has teleport, then the pets get teleport. If your character has super speed, then the pets get super speed. Because if your Mastermind had figured out how to do this, yeah, they're going to pass their travel power onto their pets. I probably should add that to the slide. Just, kind of as a note, because it is kind of important. We'll put it over here, and we'll do the same thing. We'll do a black background. Masterminds will pass on their travel powers to their pets. Always. And if you're going, well, what if the pets don't have the animation act? Well, they do. If you hit group fly, your pets fly with you. If you have the team teleport, your pets teleport with you. But if you take, and that's, like incant, while I'm thinking about it, new slide, because we're going off on a tangent here. New slide, incant. And we'll go with orange background here, because this is incant. Fix incant to be less annoying. And we'll do another box right down here. And we'll go with the same color, orange. And our solution, split core and radial. And we'll do another box over here. And we'll copy that box. I'll bring it down here. We'll back you up some because we may need some more room for our arrows to make sense. Okay. And what I mean by split core and radial is that right now core and radial basically... Okay, we'll do a present first. And we'll go with a slightly darker shade of orange. Present. Core and radial. Separate it by... Excuse me. I think I just smacked the mic that time. By knock radius, buff duration, stealth presence, and I think that's it. Like, or whether or not by knock presence, field buff duration, stealth presence, duration. Well, it's kind of a sucky way to split core and radial. Rather, what should be done, and we'll resplit. Actually, that's what we will call this. And one of these I'm going to figure out that just clicking mouse on it is going to be quicker. And we'll resplit core and radial. So now we'll draw some arrows in place. And we'll turn you dark orange. Well, dark orange, and we'll turn you dark orange. And now we'll do a bump here. And we'll do you purple. And we'll do a bump here. And we will do you red. Okay, and we'll do this one in light purple. And we'll do this one in light red. Okay. Now, how are we going to fix incant? Well, core is going to be team. Has knock. Has knock. Has stealth. Has full heal duration. Okay. Actually, we're just going to do full durations. So the longest timer. So it basically has everything. Full range, full duration, full everything. Full durations, full range. Radial, on the other hand, should be radial player plus pets. Has knock, has stealth, full durations, full range. Boom. Just fixed incant. Now, if you want to take your team with you, go. And we'll do some more arrows here. And we'll outline our scenarios. Scenario 1, Scenario 2. And actually, we will do a swap here. Okay. And now we will take that one and make it a slightly darker shade of red because it's a result. We'll take that one and make it a slightly darker shade of... we'll go with... actually, we'll stay with that blue. Alright, so the result here is result run TFs, run MOTFs, run trials, help teams. Alright, and this one for solo players. Only buff pets. Don't annoy teammates. With constant incant spam. Okay. Now, okay, I know the question is going to be asked. When incant was implemented, was it a response to players wanting/needing ATT assembled a team while running Master of Task Forces? I don't know. Master of Task Forces, including incarnate powers, was kind of always a, I want to say a nice benefit rather than an intended result. Because there were some other changes on the back end. Like, you used to be able to run Master of Task Force attempts at -1, and then developers changed the scaling code so that you couldn't run Master of Task Forces at -1, and promptly broke the Katie Hannon Task Force, which relied on some of those scaling code that was broken. I'm not even sure as Katie is still scaling properly. It seemed to be scaling properly the last time I ran one, but it's one of those kind of, if you go into it and the enemies don't feel like they're increasing in difficulty, the scaling code may just be messing up again. But okay, so there we go. Fixing incant to be less annoying. So we started out with the different kinds of powers. Why everything is so wacky to begin with. We have all of these different scaling factors going hand in hand that were predicated on just a broken base to begin with. We've got a quasi-fix for masterminds to make them more useful in teams, as well as to give, even if you... and this is where I'm not really sure how pet endurance synchronicity would actually be implemented. I mean, do you actually have to have the pet summoned, or do you just have to have the power? Because I'm kind of keeping in mind some incarnate task forces, like the one with the big green goo. What is that? Antimatters. The reactor incarnate trial, where your mastermind pets can just go squish. And there are some nasty hacks in there to try and keep mastermind pets from being rendered completely useless. I think they may also be now immune to the beam, and they may also get a +1 to the level scaling as well. They may share the plus scaling from the player and then have an additional bonus. There are lots of nasty hacks in place to make masterminds livable with. The desired, uh, I guess, approach would be once you take the pet, once you have the power and it's like a proc, like any other proc, it does a check for what level are you at. You are at level 35. Do you have your tier 3 pet? Yes, you do. You have the is the pet out? Doesn't check for that. Just have you taken the power? Yes, you have. You get the endurance buff boost, and that might be like tied to supremacy. And there's another thing where supremacy is wacky. It's like there's no clear indication of how far supremacy reaches, and there have been suggestions made in the past to boost supremacy range. I mean, make it double the range, triple the range. I'm not sure how far supremacy should be boosted. Uh, but the lack of UI prompt or lack of any kind of notification that supremacy is in effect is annoying. I mean, not good. So, put a small note up here. Now we'll do it like right across up here, and we'll do it like in, say, light pink. Better supremacy UI prompt. More range. Just while I'm thinking about it, some other factors of masterminds. Okay. Alright, going back to our writer and fixing elemental damages. At this point, I'm not sure that it can be fixed. It would be a massive, overwhelmingly impossible task to go through and edit all of the enemies added to the game to make elemental weaknesses actually weak and bring elemental damages. I mean, the thing is, what we come back to, what I keep saying over and over and over again. We'll go ahead and we'll add it to the slide here. Control A. I'm getting better at moving the slide. And we'll do this one in black. And we'll go for our text. Non-defense IO buffs can be tripled. Simple statement. The practical case in point here is, and we'll do this one and say a purple. That was the line, not the box. We'll do this in a purple. And we'll do this one in, well, no, not that one. We'll do it in a, we'll go with that purple. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is defense. 45%. NPC plus minus 5%, 5%, 45% total chance. So, All right, 100%. 100% minus 10% minus 45%. Now, what this means, and we'll do another box below it, and we'll go with a slightly darker shade. Text. NPCs always have a 5% chance to hit or miss, a 10% chance total for a system forced hit. Okay? And we'll do a new box. And we'll do it in the same pink. Thus, there is always a system enforced 55%, 10%, or we'll do 5% hit, miss, 5% hit plus chance we'll shrink miss and hit to make this fit. Plus 45% roll. The player's defense is the roll from the player. Okay, does that make sense? That you have 45% soft cap is the reason it's 45% is that NPCs always have plus minus 5%, 5%. 45% total chance. 100 minus 10 minus 45, 45. NPCs always have a 5% chance to hit or miss, a 10% chance for a system forced hit. Thus, you only have 90% to work with. 45% of that is random chance. 45%. Okay. We'll move this down. And we'll put another box in here. Actually, no, we can put it in here. 45% enemy miss. So average enemies have a 45% chance to miss. Equals 45%. So 100% chance to hit minus 10% system force minus 45% enemy miss equals 45%. So NPCs always have a 5% chance to hit or miss. The player's defense then is the roll chance from the player's defense is the roll chance from the player against the remaining 45% hit non-system or unforced system hit. Against the remaining unforced system hit at 45%. Player defense covers the gap. Okay, does that explain soft cap defense and why defense is so important? What you're doing is you are literally taking it down If you have 45% defense to a specific to fire, cold, energy, negative, psychic, toxic, smashing, lethal, or 45% defense to AoE, melee, ranged. Okay, we'll put this in a box as well, because this may be useful. Same pink. Okay. Ranged, melee, AoE, smash, lethal, energy, negative, fire, cold, toxic, psi. Okay, I'm going to have to move some of these boxes up, because that's taking up a lot of space. Alright, 45% to any of those, you have covered the gap. %45 hit plus 45% or 45% D plus 45% miss equals 90% covering melee, ranged melee, AoE, smash, lethal, energy, negative, fire, cold, toxic, psi. And that means you only have the 10% chance for a system forced hit miss. Hit miss. And that means your total is 95%. That means once you are soft capped, and I again repeat, once you are soft capped, and we'll move this box down so there's separation, and now we'll draw some arrows. I have Getting slightly better at this. Alright, so does that complete the chain for you? When you have soft captive defense, you have only a 5% chance total for enemies to hit you. Okay. Now let's go over and look at resist for a second. And resist is AT cap tanker brute 90%, heat veet 85%, everyone else 75%. Now you can already probably see the big problem here, and we'll highlight it in red. Defense can avoid of all incoming damage. No mez, no effects, nothing. Resist on the tanking archetype caps at 90%. Caps. You can't get it any higher. So by default, defense is more valuable than resist. And we'll move this box over here. And we'll change this box color to black because it's important. And we'll do a new box. And we'll also do black. Text. Resist cannot be improved over cap. Resist does not offer magnitude protection. This is actually a big problem, because this means that in order for IO bonuses to be valuable to a player, and we'll do this in black. And there's the phone. Okay, that was dinner calling. So if I want to eat tonight, I'd better go grab some food. So I guess this is where I'm going to end the stream for now. But we'll go ahead and bring this box out real quick. But this is the big problem with coming back to Where did I put it? Oh, up here. Non-defense IO buffs can be tripled. In order for resist values in an IO set to just match, to go from our caps here, the barrier for soft cap is at 45%. The barrier for a hard cap for most archetypes is at 75%. You've got to get at least, excuse me. The complication here is, and we'll highlight this in black. The only pool resist toggle is tough, smash lethal only. Ancillary toggles magnitude protection, nor the range of, nor base total resist value, nor base elemental resist values. Okay, what that means is that if you get, like, say, Fire Shield, you only get Smashing Lethal Fire protection from it, or resistance. If you get the Dark Armor, you only get Smashing Lethal Toxic negative energy. You don't get a base resistance. Whereas in other pool powers, with, and we'll move some of these boxes over, like Weave, combat jumping, maneuvers, they buff all defense values equally. So you have more opportunities in pool powers to build defense. You have a much lower gap. You only have to get to 45% defense to be at soft cap, whereas if you're on a non-tanker brute or Peacebringer, Warshade, Arachnos, you have 75%, and that's a 30% gap to close that you can't close in pool powers. This is why I say that the non-defense IO buffs can be triple. It's not just regeneration, it's not just maximum HP, it's not just all the other, it's not the endurance discounts alone, it's everything. Everything is undervalued, and it's realistic to make a build that can hit the defense soft cap. There's lots of you can do that with almost any power combination. I mean, I'm literally tempted to just roll dice, pick a power set, and show that I can take it to a defensive soft cap. It may only be smashing lethal, but that's still 90% of the attacks in the game. But you can't do that with resist. You can't do that with health. You can't do that with regeneration. You can't do that with recovery. You cannot get an equivalent return on value. And that's one of the things that really hurts Masterminds. If Masterminds could get massive amounts of endurance recovery out of IO sets, then maybe we wouldn't be talking about pet endurance synchronicity. If, coming down here, if Masterminds could get Incan that was team only, well, that'd be a great solution at high levels for like a Dark Mastermind, which has lower healing powers compared to everything else. That'd be great for a Nature Mastermind. That'd be great for a Thermal Mastermind. That'd be great for a Radiation Mastermind. I mean, anything with Electric Affinity on Incan is just sick. Trust me on that one. It's sick. But because the IOs are so unbalanced to begin with, because the starting point where everything was built from to begin with was incredibly, just mind-blowingly, a variant range here that is greater than the entire average difference between archetypes alone. These are fundamental problems in City of Heroes that are not easily addressed. And the best it can be realistically done on the labor that is available to the Homecoming developers is to do incremental patches and add more enhancements to the game, like the teleport set that I outlined. Add more enhancements to the game, and use those enhancements, and maybe rework the inherents, and a lot of the edge cases, a lot of the problems that newer players may have or experience as we try to grow the game and get more players in the City of Heroes. Going back and thinking realistically, how are we designing this? How are we dealing with very bad decisions made very early on? Elemental damages were handled with kids' gloves. That's the best way I can put it. They were undervalued to begin with. There's no point to playing an elemental character if you're looking for elemental damage against something that's weak to that damage, because they're just not weak enough to be any different from just grabbing a character that has a smashing lethal attack. And you can do a lot more with weapon customization and melee attacks than you can really with some of the actual. It's like broadsword with fire sword makes a better fire melee than fire melee. Bio armor makes a better fire aura than fire aura. Alright. That's basically all for now. I do need to go get some food. So I guess we'll go with the classic one. I'll catch you later. This has been Aurian Archive with Hybrid